Awesome. Happy Monday, everybody. Melissa here, and apologize. I still have got this little tickle throat left. But today we are going to dig into something that I know I feel like you guys get to know all my stuff on this. My ongoing journey with adrenal fatigue, but really Melissa is going to dig into the bigger picture and what does that all mean? Because from my work with her, what I've learned is the adrenals are such a small piece of what's really going on. And, if you're a high performing person on here and you are like a hard worker and you've got constantly goal setting, you're trying to keep up with your fitness and your food and all the things that I know I do, I think we're the kind of folks that are caring enough about this and tend to be the ones that put stress on our bodies in this way, right? And so as I've been going through this journey, I feel like more people probably are going through it than even realize they are.
Right.
What can that look and feel like? And again, Melissa's going to zoom out about like, what could it really be? We're in the process of doing some more testing to just get some more fine tuning around what else can help. But, I think it's got this kind of broader term, adrenal fatigue, but it means a lot more. So, what that can look like, you guys, is, being low energy, especially if you have a difficult time waking up. And then you might get a bout of energy at like 10 o'clock at night, which is annoying, right? Because you're like, I have to go to bed. So then I'm not so tired, I'm trying to get up tomorrow. Overuse of caffeine. When I was thinking about how much coffee I used to drink in my 20s, Melissa, you would die. I still like my 1 cup in the morning, and I get it from a local grinder that it's all pesticide free and mold free and all that good stuff. But which is really the issue with coffee, you guys. Coffee is not the bad guy, but excess of anything is not good. And then also just like I will say this. So once I turned 40, what started to happen was I would just have to lay down. Like I literally could not keep pushing like I used to. And from my understanding, that's kind of the tipping point is that age. And so, so I know Melissa's going to dig more into what does that possibly look like. And then we'll talk a little bit about like, how do you sort that out and how do you start to heal? And I think, again, as I've really looked at the patterns, I think this is something I've been dealing with for my whole life. I have a dear friend who she had such bad adrenal fatigue at the age of 5, she went mute for a whole year. Yeah. So, and obviously you guys, home environment has a lot to do with this. So it can happen to young people. I think if it's happened when you're a little person, it's going to keep happening as you're an adult because you've built these patterns of behavior. So, Melissa, you kind of like enlighten us because you are more at the what goes on behind all this. But I know as I'm working on this journey and healing it and working to operate in a different way and still being high achieving, you guys, I think that's something I struggled with. Well, does that mean I'm going to be lazy? Like, no, it's just how we get to our goals is going to feel different. And then monitoring and making sure you build in some rest and recovery. So I get that fear. So all right, go to it, Melissa. Enlighten us, please.
Oh my goodness, girl. So I love how you opened this up because, a lot of us that are goal driven and heart driven, it's not just for people that are, I want to be this by the time I'm this age and, that really have some big things that they want to be doing. Also those of us who are really leaning into the heart space, and we still have those goals and those kinds of things that we want to address. It's a forward movement. It's a pushing. It's a, we want to accomplish something, right? And what we think about as adrenal fatigue is a lot of times we tend to get a little bit, center focused on that poor adrenal gland. It sits right on top of our kidneys. And thinking about, okay, our adrenals are worn out. They're not able to produce what they need to, which can be a piece of this. It can also be a piece of what has your body, and I love that you touched on this already, girl, is that we create patterns, right, of response through our lives. And if our body is in a pattern of producing cortisol or cortisone, is going to make a difference in how our body feels. One is inflammatory, one is anti-inflammatory, right? You felt that when that happens, you've seen it when it happens, right? Then there's also the metabolism of those hormones. But we have to think, especially when we're thinking about the adrenal and adrenal fatigue, we have to think about what it should be in the body. So let me back out a little bit more. Hormones, I like to think of as, you know, when you go to the Nutcracker and there's the whole stage of full of all the dancers. Everybody's got their thing that they're doing, right? Just weaving in and out. Everything is so interconnected. So think of that as your hormones, right? All of them. Your sex hormones, your feel-good hormones, your stress hormones, all of them, right? They're all moving together and really actually controlling what's happening in your body. So when we think about the adrenals that are kind of being extremely stressed, we need to look at, okay, what players in the troupe are leaving this guy out to dry, right? What is not working? So to really have sustained recovery for the adrenals, yes, we need to strengthen that. Yes, we need to look at all the parts and pieces around why we got here. But we also need to look at the whole terrain in the body, especially the hormone terrain, to say, okay, what is happening here as a whole? And how do we bring back balance? What do we need to activate? What is too active? And we need to encourage kind of calming. You know, there's a lot of pieces here that are needed to really sustain recovery. But you already touched on it too, is that the first thing and the last thing we want to address is what happens here, because our perception of what's happening in our world is what drives our master gland, the pituitary, to tell the troop, the hormone troop, what to do. So our perception of what's happening in our world is a big, big deal. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it's multifaceted. It's multifaceted.
Yep. I think too, you know, one of the things, love that you're referencing the Nutcracker. So I was thinking about when we'd finish the run of the Nutcracker, I'd be laid out for like 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, I was really young at that point. So I think, you know, well, I guess what are some steps for folks to kind of A, start to figure out what's going on, and then B, how to help? Like, I know we talked last week. So for you guys to know, I started acupuncture to help with this process. And one of the thoughts, I guess, in Eastern medicine, and Melissa, you can tell us maybe why, is having warmer foods and not eating, you know, like raw vegetables, which my guess is because they're harder to digest that way. But I know, like, I've been doing like hot water with lemon, and I've got even my protein shake with hot water. So it's like a hot chocolate. So doing some of those things. I will say, you know, I've seen a difference, quite frankly, immediately. You know, I know it's a combination of all these things, but I do think that's helping. What is the kind of reasoning behind that?
So remember what we were talking about at the very beginning about the adrenals producing cortisone or cortisol, and whichever one they're going heavy on, if you want to say, in the production, it still has to be metabolized. Where does that happen? It happens in the liver. So when you're bringing in warm things, it helps to warm the body. But warm lemon water is like candy to your liver, helping that flow happen, right? So, for example, one of the very first things that anyone can do when you're looking at adrenal fatigue is taking a really hard look at your life and your life choices. Number one, do you have too much going on? Do you need to hire an assistant? Do you need to back away or not back away necessarily, but reassess how your life is happening, right? How can you draw back or address some of the real stressors that are happening in your life? And number two is stress is never going to go away. We're living, breathing. That's part of life. So really looking at what you do with that stress. So even if you can't do any testing, even if you can't do anything else, those are very effective. Like that's the thread that kind of holds us all together. But if you're really looking to see about adrenal fatigue for yourself, if you're wanting to look at the adrenals themselves, but then looking at the whole troop, I would highly suggest doing a Dutch test. That's a very simple test, or something like you're doing a ZRT test, something like that, that shows the terrain of all the hormones, right? So doing that type of testing, it's easy. It's a urine test. If you want to do that, contact me. I can help you get it. The other thing though is thinking into how are our hormones made, what is happening in the gut, because they're mostly made in the gut first, right? That's where our raw materials come from. So we're looking at hormones, but under all of this, we're needing to really be looking at what's happening in the intestinal tract. So there's a lot of pieces, and right now talking about all the pieces at once, it may feel overwhelming. But the very one thing you can do is assess your life, assess your choices, assess how you feel when things happen, where you feel it, and then how can you make simple shifts to change what's happening in your body.
Yeah. Well, I think too, you know, one of the things, you know, if you guys are going through this, like for sure, you know, if you can, like I know I was fortunate enough to figure out like my insurance covered acupuncture, and I felt a massive difference in my body last week after that. And then, you know, again, making these shifts around the warm foods. It's funny, I met a woman at an event yesterday, and we were talking about this because she was getting some nutrition stuff from me, and we were talking about, you know, the warm versus cold and whatever. And and so, you know, just something she's going through. She's in the process of cutting out gluten, and you know, just when you really start to realize that all these things always start to overlap, right? And so,
They do.
and I know one of the things I had to look at was types of workout, you guys. So paying attention, you know, the visceral response. So I know, like, it's funny, like, you know, I work with a trainer and my best friend, and like our workouts right now have typically felt really good. And the other day he had us doing a series that was very like CrossFit centered, and I hated it. And it created this just stress response. And as I was looking at, you know, types of workouts that are not recommended for folks with adrenal issues, you know, CrossFit is in there. And so, you know, I love my trainer. He's one of my best friends too. So he immediately modified the series so that it didn't feel so taxing, because I literally looked at him and was like gonna cry. And so, so thankfully he listened and was like, okay, how about if we do this instead? So it was slower paced and not, no, as stressful for me physically. And again, please know that doesn't mean that it's not challenging. It's just, you know, fast paced movements like that have never been something that's felt good to me. So I'm again increasing that awareness, like that doesn't feel good. So, you know, and you know, yoga is really great, and
yoga's
not
lovely.
running, you can walk, you know, walking's good, and not making it about, you know, how quick you're going, whatever. So which, you know, again, if you're a high performing person, you know, some of that stuff might feel weird and different, but you know, you'll actually find that I feel so much better. Like I just, I'm just paying so much attention to how I feel through this process, which is probably the first time really ever in my life, right? So
I love that.
Yeah.
Excellent job.
Thanks, Wes. So yeah, you know, but definitely you guys. So talk to us about that first test you mentioned, Melissa, the urine test. Is that something people order through you? Can they do that through their doctor? Like, what does that look like?
So You may or may not be able to get it through your doctor, very likely not, but you can look it up and do some research around it. You can look up dutchtest.com. What I suggest, especially well for guys and gals, is to do a Dutch complete, because that looks at the whole hormone terrain. If you want to do that, contact me. I can order that for you. It's very simple. You get the kit, comes to your house, all the pieces, everything that you need is in that kit, and then you send it back directly to the lab. So very simple, but it tells us a ton.
Yeah. So just think about that, you guys, and especially, I mean, I think, like you said, men too. I've been definitely noticing some patterns. My husband's like, huh. And so, but, which I think he does a better job than most for sure. But what's cool is he's very aware when he needs to rest.
I
and
love
he
that.
will do that very easily. And it's something I remember, like, you know, he would just go take a nap and I'd be like, it's like the middle of the day on him, you know, but he's so aware of when his body's got to take that break. So, and even how he works out and when and all that. So, you know, it's just something for us all to be paying attention to, because as we know, as we get older, that's when these things start to add up, right? These kind of old patterns don't serve us anymore, and then they start to wear on us. So, but as always, you guys, I just recommend, you know, reaching out to Melissa and checking in with her and starting that process to figure it out, because, you know, I'll say, you know, I guess they're not massive changes, but, you know, feeling significantly better in a short period of time. And actually, I haven't had any afternoon caffeine in a full week, which is, you know, I used to do a cup of tea in the afternoon, which I haven't done. I had a pretty slamming weekend full of events. So, so definitely you don't have to, you know, feel like you need like an IV of caffeine dripping through you at all
right.
times.
Right.
Keep things going. But
exactly.
yeah, so reach out to Melissa and start to get an assessment of what's going on, probably give you a much better idea too of the full picture. So
exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you. This was a good conversation.
Always just the tip of the iceberg.
I know, right? Oh, all right, you guys have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk next week.
Thanks, Melissa.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.